said he would put on this program for us, and he would send the gentleman down. So he has sent Mr. Howard Seufer down, and Mr. Seufer is retired from the Fenton Glass Company, and he spent 29 years there. He was a quality control manager and an industrial engineer with them. And he was their data processing. I don't know how you get from a quality control manager or industrial engineer to the data processing, but I guess that he was very universal back there, I guess. And I think that those who've been back to the Fenton factory probably realize that there are a lot of universal employees there. Mr. Seufer had been married for 46 years. The same woman, Howard. Right there. And they have 6 children. And we're glad to have him to volunteer to come down and give us the program. And he'll tell us all that we'll need to know about molds and making the glass. So, Howard, we'll let you have the program. Thank you very much.
Why should you know about molds? Who cares? You don't collect molds, they're too darn heavy to carry around. I'll tell you that like a little car that came all the way from West Virginia. You should care because normally blown ware costs more than pressed ware because it's slower to make. You ought to care because there are features that are inherent in pressed ware that you won't find. Can you hear me back there? No. Well, we start again then. Crank it up again. Let's put it alongside the other one. How's that? Right. Okay. So you should know when you see a plate. I saw some of the plates, beautiful plates on display, and there's a line right down the center on the inside. Not cracked. And my wife said, oh, that's probably in the plunger. I said, no, that's a shear mark. There are features that are inherent to the way that pieces are produced. You can't find a settle wave in a blown piece. We'll go on to what a settle wave is a little later, but they're quite prominent in pressed pieces. So that's why you should know how the piece was made and whether it was pressed or blown. And then there's all kinds of variations. But let me start first with a little videotape. If I can get this thing started, I think I can. Got a little greeting here. Frank Fenton didn't come. Now Bob Grissom twisted his arm. Let's see, that should do it, I think. Please, I tried out before. There we go. Okay. So here's a little videotape to get us started. Fenton Factory. For those that haven't been there, I'd like to invite you to come up to West Virginia, enjoy the tour. This is a scene in the factory. Glass always starts with sand, soda ash, and lime, and then some pieces of recycled glassware. And these fellas are going to load this furnace here. Can you see that? With the sand and soda ash lime. And if you look very close, you see some black chunks. Those are recycled glass. We use about 25 to 35% because we can do it faster. And if you look close, you see some white flakes. That's the material actually melting already. It melts at 2,600 degrees, but now watch. If anybody can remember making fudge, that is what you're going to see glass looks like when it melts. Should be here right about now. There we go. Whoa! And you tell me you've got a bubble in your glass? Don't tell me your troubles, I'll tell you mine. Yeah. Look at them. And then this is a furnaceman. He's going to pull it out and he's going to check it to see how many bubbles there are in there. And it's called the roughness of the glass. And when they're very, very small, he'll close it up, cool it down, and allow them to work the glass. And what we'll do today is go through the molds. This is just, here's a fellow that's starting a piece being blown. The blower's taking it, putting it in a mold. He's blowing the piece, uses either his mouth or air pressure because of the design, and then 60 or 70% of all the pieces get reshaped, as you'll notice. We're not going to go into this stuff very heavy. Ah, they're carnival glass. That's how you get carnival glass. Very simple. And then I saw these two strangers, Frank Fenton and Mrs. QB. She's from England, and she wrote one book on carnival glass, and she's researching to write another one. And very shortly they're going to give us a message. That's Frank Fenton. He's 6'7". A couple of people here who would like to say hello to you. Bob Grissom, listen.
I wish I could be out there, but I haven't cut the grass on Saturday. They put fertilizer on the grass, it's growing so bad every time. Leave that if you like to.
That's for you. And then for the Atkinsons, if they're here, here's an English person. Marion Quinton Boxendale. Mrs. Cusick. Well, thank you very much. We'll leave that be for a minute. I'd like to know, now that you know who they are and who I am, I'd like to know who's here. How many have never been to a hand glass factory? Okay. All right. How many here have ever worked in glass? 1, 2. Where at?
I work with stained glass.
The stained glass, yes? Where'd you work?
Anchor.
Anchor hockey? Where at? Aha, okay. How many know about molds? Aha, there's 4, 5, 6, 7 experts. You can leave. Come on, sit down. We don't want you here. Right? Okay. Now, the very first thing I want to know is, what questions do you have about molds? Come on, speak out. Yes, sir.
How are the molds produced with lost wax process, possibly, or?
Okay, how about that? Less wax. I know what you're talking about, okay? Next.
What keeps the glass from sticking to the mold?
Okay, she wants to know what stick, got an eye in it, right?
If it sticks, how do you clean it?
How do you clean what, the glass? Okay.
If it sticks, maybe it don't stick.
How to clean. Next, come on, let's hear some more. Yes?
How much does it cost one?
How much does it cost? Dollars.
You get new ones all the time, you still use some of your...
You know what? That's such a beautiful question. By golly. Fentons just love questions like that, you know? Oh my, yes. You've got to have some flowers. We love that when they say, because we put out so many new patterns. Thank you. Some more questions. The question was, how many new ones do we make? Sorry, I'll repeat them. Sir.
Do molds really wear, or what accounts for the fact that some mold work is so sharp and some's not?
Okay. Next.
Can you have a mold without a seam?
A mold without a seam. Yes, sir. Well, oh, I'll tell you. I'm sorry if this, can you still hear me? How's that? I tell you, these questions are fantastic. And he looks like he hasn't had enough breakfast. Take a look at him. Now, you're not allowed to eat this during the meeting. Hang on to it, though. I'll be back to you. Okay? got a question over here. Anybody got a question? You got a question?
How heavy are the molds?
How heavy? How heavy? Well, I haven't got a hernia yet carrying them. Okay. Another question.
Do you keep all the molds? All the old molds?
Old, keep them. Keep old. Molds. Security?
Yeah.
Well, he asked what kind of security we have. Like what?
These ball flyers.
Want to buy a people mold?
What was that?
Buy a people-based mold.
A people-based mold. Is that your wife's bird? Okay, I knew that some guy would want to give his wife a rose with that question. If you ever lift one of these molds, you know what the biggest security you got? Take a guess.
The way.
The weight, absolutely. Here, would you pass that back to his wife? And you hang on to that. I'll be back to you. Well, okay, let's go 2 more questions. I don't know I'm going to answer any of these. I want to know what you're interested in. Yes, Cliff?
Are they steel or what kind of an alloy or what is the metal they're made of?
Steel. Okay, I cut through it. That's ordinary cast iron.
And the wood is what kind of wood?
Oh, the wood is cherry or apple wood. And until our psychologist died, we used to get the trees off of his farm, off Waverly Road to the chicken farm. Yes.
Why is the new glass heavier than the old glass? Same patterns and what have you?
Okay. Well. Okay. Yeah. No, it's not. It has to do with dollars, I believe. Give you more glass, but we don't have as many cracking because when they're thin, when you're pressing them especially, the thin ones set up more quickly and the crack in the thick and thin pork. One more question. Let me cut my mic. I'm sorry, I'll tell you what. Let me undress here. Okay. You don't mind? Yes, go ahead, ask your question.
How long does it take for a person to make one piece of glass?
One piece of glass? Want to put it on my tongue? Yeah. There you go. How's that? And I promise not to jar them off my belt. Any more? One more question. Come on. Yes.
Machined or are they done by hand?
She asked, are the molds machined or done by hand? Both. They're machined first and then done by hand. There's the last question right there. Yes.
The technique is used today that was used back in the early 1900s
For
for making the glass.
making the glass,
Has it changed?
as an industrial engineer, I can tell you it's almost identical. When we put in a 40-foot conveyor 12, 14 years ago to save a man walking from here to here, it ended up on a scrap heap. They use the same tools. They call them pacellas, pinchers, paddles. It's very similar. It goes back about 900 years that way. We're going to move on. Well, we got one more question. We can't go. Wait. Yes, May. It's May Bradley.
Is each piece...
You want to stand up, May? Come on, stand up. Come on, May. You're up here. Come on. Ask them all. Ask them all.
Do they only have one mold for each piece? I mean, is each piece individually made, or do they have a dozen molds just alike?
That's a good question, right? All right, Golly, that's fantastic. Yes. They usually, for press molds, will have 2. Because they'll be working one and putting the other one out and letting the glass set up a little longer before they start. The 2 molds, 8 or 904 hours. Okay, let's move on. Time for getting on to molds. Molds don't just fall out of the air. The patterns don't fall out of the air. They have a design committee. It meets every week. And the Fentons, it's a big family. There's no full-time designer. There's a decorating foreman, a hot metal foreman. There's hot metal and cold metal in the factory. Hot metal is when you can't touch it and cold is when you can. Simple. How's that? You remember that. Somebody says you want to go to hot metal, just remember it's going to be warm. Okay? So they get together and they look at sketches, old pieces, pieces that we have on hand, antiques, and they decide what they would like, and what happens is the artist will create a sketch, perhaps. And that'll, somebody say move it, make it a little wider, a little narrower, you know how that bit goes. And you end up, this came from that. Now that doesn't look like much, but you asked about the machining. When the mold maker got this, the cavity in there, this was all round shape. He had to make a flat shape out of a round shape and have the edges straight and all that. How long did it take? About 3 months to make that mold. The cost, around $8,000. That help? That's our target right now. If you said we need a mold made, we'd say right around $8,000. Sometimes our new designer will sculpt in plaster. And if he sculpts in plaster, this is what he was creating right here. And it's got a pattern. And then the fellows in the mold shop will interpret that into that. And this is a basket, and this is a very good illustration. As you'll notice, the top on this was different from the drawing. This appeared to be a bowl with a foot, and lo and behold, we also made a basket out of it. So when they're creating their designs, they're thinking ahead, what can we make out of this? How many applications are there? For example, here's a bell. Where's the lady with the rose? Oh my goodness. I thought so. It's a good illustration because, you know, you can make something out of this bell. You can make a swung out vase. That's just perfect. Isn't that just perfect for her rose? You mind if I get back here? Yes. This is a rose. This is a beautiful bud vase. Just put it in there. Put it in there. There you are. Aha. So you see, you can make other shapes out of it. Yes. I didn't see him. Did I see you smile? I thought you did. Aha. Here's another bell, right? No clapper, but you could make a Danish holder. Would you put the Danish? I need the plate. The hotel needs a plate. Would you take that? There you go. You just hold that. Yes, right? You sure can't set it down. Okay. All right. So you get the concept. A mold can be used for many shapes. The mold, this is a blow mold that made this shape. The same mold made that shape. Made that shape. Made that shape. And could have made this shape. Almost all your plates start out as bowls. Almost all of them. Not everyone. Frank Fenton insisted I bring this plate with me. It's a reverse C plate, this antique. I lose this, I'm dead. Yes, it's called a reverse C plate. This is one of the few plates that are pressed. Some of your commemorative plates are pressed. But most of your art glass plates start out as a simple bowl. And then there's a thing on the bottom of almost all pieces, this shape right here. That's not accidental. There's a thing called a snap that holds those. And then they're used to reheat them. This is called a Marie. And as far as we know, including checking today with people whose girlfriends were named Marie, we don't know the origin of the name. But you take that and hold it by the Marie, this bowl, and heat it up. And when you bring it out, you got it's held on the end of a long pipe. You just rotate it and it flattens right out. That's how you make plates. Now, I'd like to talk to you about our mold makers. They start, they make a wood pattern, and then they send it away to the foundry, and they make something that looks as god-awful as this. See that? And if you'll go up later and look at the molds, you'll find that all these surfaces are nice and flat, there's holes drilled in them, and there's a pattern on the inside. But it starts out like that. And to illustrate what a mold maker must do, let's take a look here. These are little files. You can see them up here. He'll show you his files. Now look at his chisels. They're all made right there. It's called a riffle because the way it's got a twisted end. It's a regular file. He's got hundreds of those. Each guy's got hundreds of these. And he plays like the shoemaker and the elves, you know. Patience is unbelievable. Here's Al Van Dyke, my friend. And again, you ask how long it takes to make a mold. Watch this. He's been on this for over 2 weeks. That's just a plunger. And it's merely a very simple diamond pattern that he's chipping.
That's wood?
No. All our molds are cast iron. Gray cast iron. Because he asked about release, because glass doesn't stick to it unless you get above 930 degrees. Then it sticks. Or, and he's got to be careful, if he makes that too deep, they put it in, they won't get it out. And then you have to let it cool, and then you take a hammer and so forth, and that's how you clear out the molds. But see how he's doing many files, many files. Now what he's doing here, took a piece of iron, he puts dope on it. We're just going to condense mold making for you there. You're going to get mold making in about 15 seconds or maybe 30 seconds. He puts some dope on it. And then he drew a couple of guidelines. Now he's putting his pattern in there. If he had one that had flowers, he would look at the drawing, he'd put his dope on, and then he would draw his flowers. And then he started chipping them out. He has to think in reverse. He has to go down in, opposite of a sculptor. And in the 1970s, when we had to start putting the word Fenton on the bottom of pieces, they had to know what not-nef was. They were good at writing it that way. But as you'll see here, we now do it with a stamp. And now that is one of the newer things we do. But it only took him about 7 years to get from not-nef to a stamp. What he's doing, now watch, he's chipping this out, and this is what he does. And like I say, 2 weeks, and I think sometimes the mold will take him 2, 3, 4 months sometimes. All right, now he's chipping out. This happens to be an H, backwards. Followed by an O backwards, followed by an A backwards. You guys got a great organization, I can tell you that. Think about it, huh? Just think about it. Yeah, look at here. What he's doing, he's chipping this out. And if you watch, now what he's going to do, he's going to take some clay, because as he goes along, he doesn't know what he's doing yet, how well he's doing. Sometimes they can pour plastic in it, sometimes they take clay, and then they can see what they have done. You see, watch it up there, he'll show you. There you are, whoa! Look at that. See that? Okay? And then I said, Al, give me a flower on that, will you? So then he takes a chisel and he starts making a flower out of it. Okay, you see that? Okay? I'll come around this side, right? Cut through. And if you watch him now, he's not happy enough with that flower. He's going to take a gouge and take more material out of the flower. He outlined it. There he goes. I'll tell you, that's about a 40-minute video that I condensed. Now he's putting Fenton in there in a stamp. And it's also got a 900 for the decade. Man, that's what they have to go through all day long. Patience. They have a 4-year apprenticeship program. Some of them are bench hands. That's what he is. Sounds like a very simple name, but very, very skilled, tremendous patient. Ah, here we go. He's going to show us the finished product. That's this right here. Okay, I think that's about all we're going to have here. Let me see. Oh, see, now you're going, come on, Al. Oh, yeah, whoa, back up a little bit here. Yeah, I mean, it can drive you nuts, man, doing that. Incidentally, everybody got a handout? All right. Lucky I got one with me here. In the lower right-hand corner, you're going to find a number. Okay, we're going to raffle that off. Not raffle, we're going to give it away at the end, okay? So that's your lucky number. You can end up with an authentic piece of nothing. I mean, a piece of iron. Okay? Let's see where we're at here. All right. Now, come to the important part, pressed and blown. First of all, what is a mold? Will you agree that perhaps a mold is a shape? Try this anyhow. A mold is a shape that accepts glass and creates a pattern in it. That's simple enough. I didn't write that one, it's an easy way to say it. Now, a pressed mold is called that because you press the glass, you force it to move into its pattern by pressing it with a ram. A press mold is a mold. And on your sketch you'll see there's a punty. A punty is something about that long, about 5 foot long. Fella gathers glass on the end, and he brings it over to the press like that, and just drops a blob in. And the presser cuts it off. You can see a snip with a personal touch there. And it's kind of a partnership between the gatherer and the presser. The gatherer gives too much. And then you got the extra heavy piece, too heavy. Doesn't give him enough. He can't possibly fill it up. So it's kind of a partnership. And then the presser, after a bit, is cut within probably about a ½ ounce. Even on a thing that's maybe a pound and a half. And so you got that gob of glass sitting in his cavity, which got a pattern on the inside, and then they push a ram down in it like that, and it oozes it up and around it. Why doesn't it go up and out? Get a cavity, and you push a ram in it, and the glass moves up, why doesn't it go out? The answer is on the page, gang. It's called a ring. Right there. You see that thing, second thing from the top? A ring. A ring. Ring, right here. That's what a ring looks like. It sits on the mold, partly on the mold, and this inner part here, the plunger just clears this. The plunger just goes down. There's a plunger. That thing's heavy. That's why they've got security. Weight. Goes through there. Nice fit. And this other shape here, the mold, fits on the outer part of this pattern in the ring. You see that right here? To there. That's why when you have a piece of, like a tumbler, a simple tumbler, it's got this nice smooth top. If you got a scallop, the ring would be scalloped. And the mold makers make the rings, they make the plungers, they make the molds. Sometimes matching the ring to the top of the mold is almost as much as making one section of the mold. Okay, now test. When you take a mold and push a plunger down into it, what kind of a mold is it? Pressed. What? Pressed, right? Yep. Who said blown? Nobody. Good. I like the way you guys learn. You're doing good. Where's the lady with the flowers? Oh, you thought I forgot you? Oh, I couldn't forget you. Where's my bill? Well, here's one. Ah, here's my bill. This bill. If we took that and put it in something on a long pipe and heated it up, that bill, and then took it and went like this, kept spinning like this, it would draw out into this shape. Here's just one of these. For those flowers, they ought to look gorgeous in there, I think. Yes. You're so welcome. I hope you can stand it up sometime. Okay, let's talk about blow molds. Let's talk, oh, wait a minute, let's go back. I talked about defects, press molds, defects. I mentioned that very casually, like the presser cuts off the right amount of glass. As his scissors cut it, believe it or not, that glass is 1900 degrees. He cuts it, he chills it. And it goes into the mold. Now, it depends how long it sits there, it may remelt, not remelt, but soften. Or in a very large one, like a cake plate, he'll cut it and they say throw the tail. He'll throw it over so the shear mark lands on top and maybe rolls its way back in. A lot of those plates show very clear shear marks right in the center. It's a feature of the glass. Up to a point, if they're real severe, we reject them. If they're slight, we accept them, because that's the way it comes. Also, if you look at the lightning marks, left-hand side of your page, right here, see those lightning marks? That's where that gob fell into that mold before the plunger came in. And it sat in. And where the top of that gob hits the mold, it starts to chill. And then when he presses down, it starts skidding. And what do you get? You get settle waves. They look like water waves. And you can usually, a piece like this ought to have some. No, whoa, they're really there. Whew, right here. But you can't see them unless you're looking for them. Why don't you just pass that around? You look like you're interested. Good. Fantastic. Love interested people. Mold marks. Somebody said about molds. Do we have any molds on? Who said that? Didn't you ask that? Do we have any molds in our marked seams? We call molds, mold joints. Most mold joints are straight, like this. If you have an animal, like that. If you look, you can't put a straight seam. You have to follow the contour. And so this thing will go in and out and around. It's called a HOACGA joint, C-O-G-G-L-E. And believe me, that is where the joint takes more time than the mold to make. Because you can't allow any more room for that glass to squish out, like the unicorn and items like that. So if you look at animals, sometimes you'll look close and you see a mold mark going up and down. Do we have any molds that have no joint? Yes. But, here's one, let's see. No, I don't have one here, I got one on the TV. We've got a number of them with no joints. And the only reason they have no joints is you can take the glass right out of them. Here's a shell mold that you can just dump it. There's no joint up in here. But most of them that have no joints are blow molds, and we'll get to that right away. They have joints. Ever see a joint in a light bulb? A regular incandescent bulb? You ever see a mold joint, Mark? Of course not. How are they made? Blown. Oh, great. Whoa. You guys, it's over. We're done. Yeah. The reason you don't see any joints in the incandescent bulb is that the molds rotate. A sack of glass, just like a balloon full with rubber, or with water, you've got a sack of glass there. The mold comes around it, and they start blowing it out to fit the mold. But the mold's rotating. And the mold rotates and opens up. Therefore, the mold joint just keeps going around. There's no way to get it recorded on there. Now, in the hand glass industry, we had the guy run around. No, not really. Not really. No. But we have, he's got a 6-foot-long blowpipe like this. You ever seen a guy blow glass? Oh, my hat off to him. 6 foot long, down there's the mold. He takes this thing, and he's got to position it down there. And then, because he doesn't want any joints, he's got to go. That's how you do it with no joints. If you've got a mold that has joints, then you don't want any joints to show. And we call it paste mold, which we're coming to shortly. Okay, a blow mold. A blow mold does not have a plunger. The only way the piece gets its shape is from the internal air in the sack. Fellow gathers a gob of glass on a 6-foot-long piece. That punty, incidentally, is solid. It's got a clay head about, depends on what size. From that size, for like punch bowls, down to about that size for salt shakers, for example. A blowpipe is longer, about 6 foot long, hole all the way through it. He gathers glass, and it's just kind of an amorphous shape, and he puts it down into a half of what they call a block, just a shape like that, and there's water and soap there, and he revolves it, hoping to get the outside symmetrical with the hole at the whole center there. And then when he's got that, he lifts it up and puts a puff in there to keep that air in there. And then he probably reheats it. And then if the mold is nice like this, he just merely brings it over, puts it down there, and blows it. If it's got a very intricate pattern, he'll use compressed air. And that'll give you a finer looking pattern. A real big piece like a shade, blown shade, he'll take and he'll go like that and keep blowing it so the walls don't collapse until he can get the air on it. So you might see it always. When I first started working there, all the blowers had big nets like this. Anyway, they go like who was that? Louis Armstrong. Now, if you look at the video, all they got is big guts. Yeah. I think something's changed in the last 900 years. But I think it's got a cap on it. Yes. All right, let's see. Now, if you look at your picture on the right-hand side, there's the blowpipe. You see the sack going down into there. Now, if it's this shape, what he has to do, see the shape at the bottom? How it's big at the bottom? Well, he's got this gathered, maybe it's just like a cylinder. And he'll take it and he'll roll it back and forth to squeeze down the upper part and leave the bottom part fat. So when he's going down the mold, his gather, instead of looking like this, will look like that. So it's more uniform. If you'll notice, there's an overblow on top. In the press mold, the glass goes into the mold, gets cut off, done with, boom, you're done. In a blow shop, here this guy's got a 6 foot long pipe with glass on the end, he blows it. We don't have anybody with scissors. It doesn't work that way. What he does, he blows it till he feels it's full, and then he'll push down slightly, and if you look at the top of your diagram, you'll see it's sharpened right there. It comes in and out, and that's where the overblow mark is, and you push down, and then you give one big puff like that, and pull it, and so you find a big bubble and it comes over like that. And that's how you disconnect the blowpipe. The next fellow, they'll move the mold out, the glass out. Next guy will take it, grab it by the marine, and scrape the fine glass off. And it looks like this when it comes off, very rough. And then they'll take it and reheat it and do things with it. Okay, when you have blownware, and this is an excellent example, when you have blownware, when you're blowing, there's nothing to define the inside except the outside of the glass. The inside of the piece is defined by the outside of the glass. Therefore, you can follow the contour of the outside by feeling the inside. No, pass that around. Hey. From my ear.
How do you keep the consistency of the thickness of the glass?
Oh, that's part of the skill in doing it. Sometimes it's not the gatherer who does it. Maybe it's a guy we call a blocker. Usually it's a blocker. And here again, it's a teamwork. If you need a 3-pound piece, right, golly. How about your rings? Okay, I get it. Anyway, the question was, how do you maintain the consistency of the walls, right? The first fellow has to get the right amount and get the bubble in the center. He gets it off, everything is off. And then the next guy, as he's doing it, it's called necking down, like I explained, coming to this shape. He tries to do that symmetrically. If the first guy gets a bubble off, the piece is going to be off. So it's the first guy's responsibility to get the bubble in the middle, and the second guy to maintain it there as he's manipulating the shape. Yeah. So, boneware has no pattern on the inside. You got a pattern on the inside of your glass. I don't care if it's flat open. It's been pressed. And a good example of showing you that is this piece right here. One pattern on the inside, another on the outside. You just want to pass that around, that'd be great. And let's see, why don't we do this one here? You pass that one around, just feel the inside and outside. Now, there's going to be a test later, you know. We're going to find out is it pressed or blown. All right. Here's some molds. This is a press mold. Well, let's see. Yeah, this is probably the simplest form to show you. Bless you. This is a bottom plate. If you look at your picture, you see it that way. The bottom plate has a couple of functions. One is it holds the mold up. That's important because when you're opening it up, you can't open it up on the concrete and so forth. So it maintains it and it doesn't tear the glass and so forth. Nice smooth surface. Not always, but most of the time, your bottom plate defines the bottom of your piece. Like the bottom of the tumbler, for example. And so this part will be inside the mold, and then the mold will be tightly around this. That's a bottom plate. There we go. Don't get my fingers in right. Yo, yeah. Armstrong method. There's mold with a shape. Sections to it because of the pattern. Can you see that? That's the mold. That's the sides. And it goes on here. Hopefully like that. And all this doesn't just happen. You asked about machining and bench work. This is drilled off center, so it locks. These are drilled so they hinge perfectly. The surfaces have to be flat, etc. It's just an awful lot of work that goes into a mold. That's where $8,000 sometimes is cheap. This is a shell mold. Reason for telling you about shell molds, a lot of you have had these, I've seen plates like this that are turned up on the edges and they have a handle. Handle comes like this, your plate, made in shell mold, made upside down. This was a cover. This made a cover for a candy box. Oh, here's a ring. I showed you the ring before, but that's the ring looks like. This made a cover for a candy box. The candy box cover was domed, and then it had a pattern knob. The pattern knob needed to be in a mold. The cover was such that if you had that in a mold, you could turn it upside down and dump it out. That's the way those plates were made. They were made into a bowl shape with a mold underneath that made that diamond-shaped handle. And what they did, they opened that up, took it out, grabbed the handle, heated it up, and then created the plate for them. In this case, Gob of glass goes in there, pushes down, makes a shape. Plunger comes up. The ring comes off. Sounds like going to bed. And you open the mold with that still in place to release the knob. And then the fellow has two handles here. He merely lifts the whole cover up and drops it. That is how the mold, shell mold, works. Bells, a lot of bells are made that way. That bell here was made that way. This was in a mold, and this was in a shell.
Do you have to clean the mold after each piece?
No, sometimes you have to lubricate them. You asked about sticking. The mold keeps heating up. When they start to get sticky, they put wax in them. Or, in this case, in the shells, a lot of times they just put the shell down in oil. We had a fellow severely injured, the first time in the history of the company, making bells. Not the presser, but the guy over here, he took it, turned the bell out, and then he put this down in the oil. That was okay, he's supposed to. But in coming, he didn't clear the oil can. And he brought it over like this, and it went under a little air pipe coming down like this, splashed it, and it splashed right up him like this, caught him on fire, and burned the presser a little bit. First time ever in 90 years. So they, OSHA, we got that fixed now, OSHA. Right? Okay. Now I said, most of the bottom plates define the bottom of a piece. Here's where it doesn't. It's used to position the mold. In this case, all we're after here is an egg. All we're after is an egg, like that. But you can't get the glass to go into a small shape like that. So you create a cavity on top of it called a fount, F-O-U-N-T. And so the gob goes in here, and if you saw it and you stopped right there, it would be hanging down in here a little bit. And then a ram comes down here, pushes down in there, and forces it into this shape. And then, so that's a mold for the fount. That's a press mold. And you cut them off later, okay, like that. And that. Variations. Here's a shell mold, not a shell mold, a ring mold or a dump mold. All you do is puddle the glass in here. Just puddle it in. When it's cool enough, turn it upside down, out. That's how you make paperweights like that. Here's another one. Ashtrays. We used to make ashtrays like this. This is what I call free form because this only had a mold and a plunger which went down like that. And if you look, the glass can squish out between the mold and the plunger. And it made very beautiful shapes. So they were very acceptable until Smokey went out of style. This is a very small blow mold. I was going to bring you a very, very large shade, like a big poppy ball shade mold. But since it's a brand new car, I decided this will do. Because the same thing, only about 1/5 the size. That's a typical blow mold. Except this one's got holes in it. Forget you don't see the holes, gang. Okay. You see the bust off here at the top? And that's where, when he blows the bubble out that way. So that's what a blow mold looks like. If it had a real deep pattern in it, the inside would follow the outside pattern. Now this serves another purpose. This is a paste mold. A paste mold is a blow mold that you coat with a carbon material on the inside. You paste it inside. And what we use is cork, ground up cork. So we paste it on the inside, put it in an oven, and it turns to nice carbon surface. There's also holes in it. Because paste molds, you have to lubricate them with water. And so what you do is you lubricate it with water and he puts a gather in there. See how he's got a very small opening at the top. He puts it in there. The mold boy closes it. He blows into it, rotating the piece like mad. And he gives me a signal like that. I open it up and he takes it out. The holes are to let the steam escape. And there are no joints. That's what a paste mold is. You won't see the holes either. On some press pieces you'll see projections, little raised projections, and that's where the holes, vent holes that they put in for the air to escape from intricate shapes to come out but not the glass, and then sometimes they wear too big. Question was, do molds wear? The Bear has been our biggest seller for years. Despite all the skills at Fenton, believe it or not, that's one of the biggest selling ones. And we've gone through probably 8 series of these molds. Many, many thousands, tens of thousands in each mold. And we now have a way of duplicating from one mold to another. You put the old mold here, put the new machine mold here, and you've got a stylus. And it follows this pattern and it cuts it in over here. About the 6th generation of those molds, somebody discovered that Bear gained weight, a lot of weight. Just a little bit each time, you know how that is. A little bit each time, right? Yes. Now another blow mold. Right here. This is called a spot mold or an optic mold. Blow mold, which is a spot mold or an optic mold, has a pattern in it. And what happens when you blow into this? What happens to the outside of the glass? It conforms to the pattern, right? Becomes the same pattern. Yeah. And if it has to go out further, if you've got in the mold, if you cut in the mold like this, the part where the glass goes out here gets thinner and it stays thicker here, thinner and thicker, you know how that bit is? You create thick and thin parts and create a pattern. It's a drape pattern. Creates a drape pattern, thick and thin. If you then take that thick and thin pattern on the end of a blowpipe, don't cut it off, just leave it on, take it, reheat it, and put it in a mold that big that's smooth. Yeah, what happens when you put it in smooth mold? What's the outside? Smooth. And the pattern's on the inside, in and out, in and out, in and out. That's how you get coin dots. That's how you get ribbed stripes like this. That's how this was done. This was put into a mold that had a very sharp spline. Did I draw one of those on there? I don't think I did I? No. Oh no, I drew it on a card. Ah, yes, that's it. Anyway, if you had one that a mold about the size, about this diameter, and it was about that long, and it had, if you look down the top, it would look like a star pattern. On the outside, you get real sharp ribs. You blow into it, it'll get thick, thin, the ribs. And then, if you put in a smooth mold and blow it out, you'll then be able to see ribs in it. If when he puts it down in the final mold and twists it as he's blowing, you get rib twisted. If you have a striking glass, how many know what striking glasses are? Tuiles? Opalescent. You know what opalescent glasses are? Do you know why the pattern turns white? Doesn't matter. Yes, it does. This thing I just explained, if it went into a mold that had a pattern like star, like that, when you took it out, you'd have ridges on the outside of your glass, very sharp points, like this, coming down like that, right? If you take that blowpipe and put it into another furnace, which is called a glory hole, and heat it, those sharp edges up on top are going to get hot. And if you have a opalescent glass, called a striking glass, they'll turn white before the rest of it. If you do it very carefully, you'll end up with, if you just chilled it right then, after you reheated it, you'd have white stripes. If you blow it into this mold, you're going to have white stripes. If you twist it slightly or it's just a little bit tipsy, you're going to get rib twisted. If that mold I just talked to you about, the spot mold or optic mold, had a fern pattern in it, flowers and leaves, very deep. When you bring it out, it'll probably be smooth with this pattern standing out. If you reheat it, it'll change color. And then you blow it in another mold, like a cannonball jug, for instance, and if you feel on the inside, you feel thick thin. Why is it thick and thin on the inside? Because it was a blow mold that followed the contour of the first one. Pardon me? Followed the ribs, right. Okay, let's get on almost through here. Now let's see a little production. Going to go fast. Here's a press mold. See, it goes in and dumps it, cuts it off. Here's a plunger. And the ring was right here. Brings it out, takes the ring off. Opens up, it's a clock. Turns out this happened to be scrapped this day, that one. Right here. Okay, here's a blow mold. This guy's called a mold holder. Very simple things in glass. A glass blower is called a blower. A presser is called a presser. A mold holder is called a mold holder. There's the overblow. Watch, you'll see it here. Watch, you'll see the overblow here. Come on. There he is. Now he's going to use air, compressed air in this one. And there's a feel to it. That's what, there's the overblow. There's the bust off right there. There, you see it. You knock that off, but then this has to come off. And the next fellow will take it and just knock it off. Like that. Sometimes we do it on a piece of steel, sometimes we do it on granite. Then he heats it up. Now I shorten this. He's in there for about 25 seconds or so. And that's to heat the end of it so it can be reshaped. You want to know what it sounds like in a glass factory? This ended up being a basket. You get some idea how long it takes to make a piece? On a basket, you sometimes have to 28. This is that mold I said, a shell mold. These are cuspidors in the dentist's office. Now watch. Takes the ring off. He'll open up the mold down here. Because of the pattern in the bottom. And this fellow lets it cool, and then he dumps it upside down. That's spit zinc, yeah, right. So a lot in South America now. Since AIDS, they come back. Yeah. Where do you think people make them? We got this from a 89-year-old guy over in Fairmont that invented the machine that rolls the top edge. You're not going to see that here. Right there. See, that's where the mold was used, for that bottom pattern. I think that's about, oh, well, we got, just a little bit more here. Let me see. Here is the spot mold. This is no joints. It just goes in and out. This is a rib pattern I talked to you about. Goes in, he makes the ribs. He's going to make one more. It's called a marver. That's when he can shape it, neck it down, or whatever he needs. In this case, he's just going straight in like a block. Now watch. There's the ribs. Right? And then it goes over to the blower. Now this guy's making a handle. Here's another mold that doesn't have a joint. You just push it down in the block and he comes out and he's got ribs in that, and that's how you get ribs on those handles, and they twist them when they make them.
How hot are the molds?
How hot are the molds? We preheat them to about 900 degrees, but on a blow mold it runs around 550 degrees, on a press mold around 800. Gets to 900, starts sticking. Things like iron start coming on a piece, black specks or rusty specks. Let's see, shear marks, we talked about lap marks. You ever seen a smile on the outside of a piece? You think, is that cracked? You know? What it is, when the guy gathering dropped it in the mold, it hit the side of the ring or it hit the side of the mold. That brief time hits it and drops in, that chill. As the glass is then being pushed around, it comes up and it doesn't completely fill against the side, and that's where you get a lap mark from. You can also get it if there's a problem with the press, and the gatherer comes out, he winds his glass up on the end of his punny, he winds it up, he comes out, and they're not ready, he goes, and the layers go back and forth on his punny and chill, and those lines don't come out. Mold marks, we try to get away from them. We polish our molds. If the fellow who's polishing them gets too close to here, it's going to open it up. And then when they press them, there's going to be that mold joint you hate. I had a woman one time bought a large shade. She called in customer service. I said, yeah, what's the problem? They wanted me to answer. She says, I got a shade that's getting ready to crack. I said, how can you tell it's ready to crack? Well, there's a line there, and it's offset. One part's offset a little bit from the other. He said, wasn't there when we bought it there? That way. So, with a big mold, sometimes if they don't lock them up, they're off-center a little bit. And you get that. So I brought her in, I asked her to come in. She came in, took her decorators, or used to revolving those things to paint a scene on them, and the paint catches in those places. And I thought, God, if she talks to these decorators, they'll convince her. And the first guy, yeah, oh, hey, let me tell you, you know. She looked at 5 decorators we got done. I said, what do you think about your shade? She said, getting ready to crack. Getting ready to crack. She said, yeah, I got one more story I got to tell you. Baskets. All basket handles, this is not molds, but all basket handles are put on hot. They look like rubber bands when they're put on. They stick it here, and then rotate the piece and stick it here. It just hangs down like this, and the guy takes a paddle and goes back and forth and gets it to shape. And I was again called up to customer service, and the woman in Massachusetts has been selling Fenton for 9 years. And I said, what's the problem? She said, basket handles. They're glue. I said, our glue, what's wrong with our glue? And she said, it's beginning to ooze out on one of the handles. I said, ma'am, have you ever been to the factory? No. I said, well, I'll explain as best I can. Remember the shear marks on the mold? Remember, cut off the gob goes in? He attaches the glass here, over like this, he cuts it off, shear mark. We try to turn them under. And if they don't get completely under, you'll find a rough place right there. And that's what it was. You see, that's why I think it's important for you to understand the difference between blow defect features of molds. Settle weights, you understand now, right? That's where the gob sits and then moves. And if we keep that mold hot, if we get over 830 degrees, no settle weights. Why don't we do it? Because 930 is right there and we stick. That's why, I mean, they should. But the guy wants to make money too. He's on incentive. So it stays around closer to 700, I'd say, down to 550 on orange peel. You know what orange, pick up an orange, you know what the orange peel looks like? Do you see that on a pressed piece? It means the mold was too cold. It just means it was too cold. I think that covers them all. Shear marks, lap marks, there's some others. Like you guys being collectors, carnival collectors, they were making this the other day, and they were spraying that picture over there. So I said, take a couple of them over, so that'll show you the difference of what you have. Okay? Incidentally, those founts, that mold with the fount, there's how much of the glass we wanted. You see that? You see that? That's all the glass we wanted. We threw the rest away. When we make mice, we throw more glass away than we make a little mouse. But we had a fount that big. Make pigs. They're all made upside down. I don't know why my blood goes to their head. So anyway, again, we cut it off. Okay? Yes? A lot of the founts we recycle.
My question was, when you recycle glass, you said it's color, and only a certain color, a certain color back.
Oh yes, only put it back in the same color. If you got two-color glass, we don't reuse it. Logos were made the same way, through a fount. You can begin to understand more about your glassware. Here's what they were making. I said, don't spray that one, please. Another reason they didn't spray it, look at that handle. Pretty crooked, huh? Very bad, very, very bad, yes. Now, let's see, anything we've not covered. First of all, got any more questions? Yes, sir, back there.
What's the purpose of the straw mark?
I thought we were going to get through with our straw mark. Yeah. Especially since we don't pack them in straw anymore in big barrels, right? Straw marks. Yeah, it depends. One thing there probably are. Remember I told you about a shear mark? A shear mark usually looks like that. A little rough sometimes. If this melts in, for some reason the edges, they'll look like that. And sometimes all you have is that. Sometimes the glass will have streaks in it, where when they're gathering, they gather and they wrap it up on a punny, and as they come up, there's what we call a tail. There's a connection between the bath of glass and what you're collecting. Those tails fall back in. Chill. In the furnace, they chill somewhat. The next one. And then when he gathers, if he gathers that up, it goes in, and you got a very smooth piece of glass, and especially if it's blown, you'll see a mark like that. Same color, but it won't be fully out to the edge. Sometimes only be a few of them, a few pieces like that, and a few marks. Straw marks, I believe, come from shear marks and lap marks. Lap marks look like this, usually. Or from streaks. Streaks, shear marks, lap marks. They don't come from straw, though, and we don't put them in purposely. If we could, we'd probably charge you for them. So you want yours to look like an antique. Let's do the three questions one time quickly. Let's see. Lost wax? No. No, we don't. We don't have anything that intricate. Although we have found a way recently to take, because of this guy's skill we've now got, to take a pattern that he sculpts, and through a process of using plastic, soft and hard and so forth, creating a mold shaped like this in hard plastic and then copying it, but not lost wax. Glass sticking, yes it does. Sometimes if they don't have enough draft in the piece, like I said, and the very first time you put on the mold, mold on the shop, put the glass in it, come down in it, and he goes like that, and he can't get the plunger up. And he pushes up like that, and he goes boom, and then we have trouble. Usually, glass sticks because it gets too hot. And when that happens, it's usually in the narrow places. Like if you've got a bowl with a foot or a tumbler with a stem, it usually runs hot in those areas. So what he does, he's got wax, a block of wax on a stick, and he just goes in like that. It melts, puts on a fire, boom, see a big fire, and that cools it. How to clean it off? Gotta be careful. When the mold's hot, it's soft. It gets soft as it's hot. We had a vase about this tall, about that diameter. Brand new one. Nice flower pattern, and all of a sudden, they were getting little things sticking out from the vase. And the guys in hot metal said, that's a mold shop, they got lousy iron, holes in the iron, and so the glass is going out into it. Had 2 molds. The funny thing is, both of them had those little dingers in the same place. And they finally found out, they still won't admit it in hot metal, but when the guy was cutting off, he was cutting down in there, and the scissors were hitting the end and doing it. Those guys in the mold shop were so clever, they put the faulty iron in the same place, you know. Right. The new ones we make, when I first started there, we had a duplicator. It was an automatic duplicator that would very slowly, like 1/1000th of an inch, I mean 5,000 inches, very slowly copy a pattern from one mold to another. The mold maker was like this, sitting there. I said, what's wrong with that guy over there? I was new. They said, you don't like that machine. Do him out of the job. Because we have a couple generations down, we found that's not the way you go. You do it manually where you can really hog it off. We can make more molds, we got more mold makers. Because of that, we can introduce more new patterns every 6 months if we want to, or new shapes, because we can produce the molds more quickly now. Do they wear? Like I told you with the bear, they wear. Of course they do. Blow molds don't wear very fast. They don't get very hot. They get 550, maybe 600 degrees. Press molds probably take a lot more abuse because of the force that's applied to that glass. I don't remember what that question was. Mold W, who knows? I probably answered, right? Heavy? Very heavy. We make one about that big that we made that one, and then we couldn't produce it.
That question was why is some of the glass heavier than others?
May, your darling. Did you remember her? Stand up, May. Come on, May. Come on, May. Come on, come on. Come on, May. Come on, May. Come on, let's have applause. Applause for May. Come on, May. All right. Tell the question. Tell him the question. Tell him the question.
Some of the new glass was heavier than the old.
Oh, why is it heavier? Because I think I answered that. It was by being thicker, we don't have as much fracturing during the manufacturing process. There are things called, you know what crizzle is? A crizzle the day before Christmas. I'm taking that one back with me. We're going to use that. Yeah. Do you know what a check is? I don't know, not a guy from the old country. No. Well, crizzles and checks come about during your processing, and bells, on bells, when you create the shape, the top edge gets cold very quickly. And usually you'll find a mark goes up, down, and back in. It's a very shallow crack. It's not a deadly crack, we call it a check because it's healed. It's not going anywhere. A crizzle, you ever take a piece of glass and if you get in the right light, it's got a very shallow, like lightning mark in it? That's called a crizzle. And that's usually because of the force during pressing where it sets up and a little more force. Only a few thousandths is set up and it cracks. We keep all our old molds. We probably got an excess of 6,000, 7,000. We got them in racks. We don't have any special security. If you want to steal one, we'll give you a, what do they call it? A pilferage pass. Yes. I suggest that keep inventory right. Just throw out your pilferage pass when you take it. But they are so heavy. I started to tell you, we made a real big mold. About that big. About that thick. And two guys couldn't lift it. And it was for a hanging chandelier. we got into the lampshade business for the original equipment people, but that one's just too big for us to make in our presses. And once again, I'd like to invite you, if you're ever well, you ever want to take a trip up beautiful West Virginia, we have hills, in case you're interested, hills, you know, kinds go up and down. I saw the other kind, I saw the flat ones you got out here. You'd be more than welcome, take the tour, see the museum. Frank Fenton himself takes care of the museum, and it's not only Fenton pieces, but there's other pieces. And if you ask, I think Bill or Frank would be glad to say hello to you and show you around a little bit. You got a question?
Is an internal fracture caused from the cooling?
Internal. Well, what do you mean internal?
Well, if your fracture is not through from inside or out, you can see it, but you can't feel it. That's when the
Two things can happen. I happen to be called crack man also. That's one of my jobs. I used to be. You know, analyzing fractures of glass. The most common thing there is that it's cracked during manufacturing. And then in subsequent processing, the outside got healed over. I've seen that. And you look inside, if it's transparent, you see a rainbow, usually. Another thing that can happen is after you press a piece, you put it out in what we call the wind. They have air blowing on it. They blow it very hard. You can actually blow to where the glass inside will start to, the outside will start to chill, and it pulls away from the center, and if there's any volatiles in there, you end up with a cavity, a small cavity. That's not as common, though. Yours mostly would be during the process before the piece is completed, and it's probably not fatal. Although most fractures are fatal. If you see a small crack in a piece, I know, well, if you see a crack in a piece and it's bright, chances are someday, somewhere, it's going to go the rest of the way. One of the biggest problems you do have is stones. You ever had a piece just blow up on you, sitting on a mantelpiece? If you got a foreign inclusion in your glass, like part of the furnace drops in, it's got a different expansion rate than the glass does, and so they bring it out and make the piece, and it gets past inspection. My wife and I were vacationing at a place over on the East Coast. We were only two people in the dining room, and this fella came up, this waiter. He got to know us after a couple of days. And one morning, the only people in there, he said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Yeah." Funniest thing happened the other day. That table over there, nobody sitting by it. They've been sitting there, and they got up over to get the meal, and that man's glass just blew up. And my wife laughed because that's not uncommon if you know glass. But every waiter and the people in the back room all saved a piece of that because those have done that. And then Unsolved Mysteries, Robert Stack on Unsolved Mysteries talked about the 3 guys in the hunting cabin, or 5 guys. And they're all playing cards here. And the ashtray on the mantle blew up. Ghosts. Because the heat finally got to it, and the stress had gotten to a point because of the difference in expansion rates that it couldn't take it anymore. If you got a piece that's real shiny, the crack is shiny, it's like being a little bit pregnant. It's going to go, eventually. Okay? One way you might protect it if you want to is put a patch across it of some sort with some glue. It might slow it up from temperatures working it back and forth. You had a question?
What is in the spray that's used to iridise pieces?
It depends. We've used probably 6 different kinds. Most of them are chlorides.
Is it powder? Or
It's wet. It's wet. I mean, you mix it.
Is it hot?
No. That's one of our problems. We spray baskets and we lose a lot of baskets cracked. It's room temperature. And they merely spray it like with a spray gun. Tin chloride is what they use for the blues and the greens. Incidentally, you ever had a piece with some silver and a little bit of gold and not much color? With tin chloride, when you spray, the first thing you get is silver, and then gold, and you go right into the rainbow of blues and reds and greens. And so that might help you also. But this is a pearlescent spray that we're using right now. Are there any more questions? Yes, sir.
Usually, slag glass more acceptable to break than just a regular colored glass.
Slag glass, you have to check the two colors out for the expansion rate. You can do that before you make it. Like purple slag, I mean, they'll have a tank of white, and somebody go get some purple and dribble it in there, and then the guy will gather them up together. I would say, yeah, if they, chances are I didn't check them out.
I don't, just like you said about the weight. But the glass water. We had less more of slag.
Yeah.
It was made for the day. And about every 2 weeks it's in our garage. Every now and then you hear just like a small 410 going off, and you're down there, and pieces of glass all over.
Well, then I would say that they weren't compatible. He's saying that the glasses blew up on him in the garage.
Most of the time it's the head or the tail. I mean, that's the only thing we're remaining anymore.
There's also a chance.
Ghost.
Ghost, that's a ghost. I love it. Oh, I tell you. Huh? Aliens, yeah, nowadays it's aliens. We're getting modern. Any other questions? Yeah.
This guy's making the mold. He makes a mistake and chips out too much. This is cast. Now, when you got patching material, what do you do with it? Make the hole bigger.
Like the pattern he's doing. Well, he'll improvise a little bit up to a point. If he, let's say, gouged that one, then he'd probably talk to the boss, and they'd probably put it back on the lathe and take it back down some. I got a bigger mystery than that, where they put their initials. Even my buddy won't tell me, but if I did that job for months, I'd have my ID on it somewhere, but he said they don't put them on. Pardon me. We do have a way of patching by welding, spray welding. Joints will sometimes break out, and so they'll patch them and grind them, but the problem there is that material has a different expansion rate, and so you're just biding time to get new mold made. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Carl.
Is there such a thing as mold separation on the end of a piece? Now, if I have a piece for sale, it's mold separation. But if I'm buying it, it's a crack. So is there such a thing as a mold? It's, you know, like a little opening, and it's iridized over.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is there any iridizing on the inside of that opening?
Yes.
Then it's probably okay.
Okay.
Because it was hot when it was sprayed. What probably happened there is called a tear. The piece tore during manufacture, where they were swinging it out, or it was getting cold as they were forming it. Around the periphery, the tension got too great somewhere, and it started to tear down inward. But if the spray's inside it, chances are, I'll get one little bit, I know this is again off, but when a crack starts in a piece of glass, for any reason, let's say they're going to take this, they're going to pull this out of the mold and it's sticking. And so he starts pulling like that, and a tear starts developing right on the inside here. You can see how it would, just like in a piece of meat. Okay? If, as he did it, he said, oh, and he let go. If, as a crack is being generated, it's got a very sharp front. If, as it's being generated, you take the tension away, the electrons will try to jump and round it off. And it will restore to about up to 95% of the original strength of the parent material. Go on to completion. I mean, not to completion, as far as they're going to go right now. And then more energy, noise, vibration, heating, cooling will cause them to grow. But if you see spray on the inside, I think they're pretty safe. But I call it crack. It's not a mold separation. Ma'am?
Is the way you iridize now the way they iridized 90 years ago?
I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't think so. We used spray guns, and we had a heck of a job when we got back into it around early 70s. because all the spray guns would get eaten up, and then we went to wood, we went to plastic, now we finally got some. I don't believe they had air sprays back then. I think they might have had a vapor process, but I don't know. I plead ignorance and age.
On that egg, if there are any of these pieces that are not iridized now,
Yeah.
you take those back to the factory and iridize them?
No,
Why?
because you have to iridize them when they're hot. The iridescence, the tin chloride, iron chloride, whatever we have,
You can't heat that up?
bonds with the surface.
You can't heat that up again?
Not as hot as you need because it'll start to deform. Oh, let me say you probably could. If you really wanted to, very, very slowly. And then you have to spray it and find some way of handling it and so forth.
Guys in the Midwest in the 60s, 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
cancer and St. Clair,
Yeah.
that did that.
Well, then you got a process. I don't know. At our place you couldn't. At our place you couldn't. No. Some people do it with vapor also. I think in Europe they do.
Under old opalescent,
Yeah, here we go.
you had far in the opalescent.
Yeah.
How come they took that away, or they changed the process?
They took fire?
No, you were old opalescent,
Yeah.
before the opalescent. You held it to light, you had far jump out of the red. Your new opalescent does not have that, which I think deters from.
Oh, by opalescent, you talking about this white?
Yeah, I'm talking about your white, your edge, say your handles.
All I can say is they probably use different chemicals now.
That's what I'm saying, they use cheaper chemicals.
Not necessarily cheaper. We've had to reinvent some colors, I know.
Okay.
Because a lot of those formulas disappeared, like chocolate formula and the Burmese formula. They disappeared with the fellow that made them, and we had to reinvent them. But I don't know. I would say it's the chemicals we're using, and it can't be any different than the chemicals had then, we're just not using them right. Anything else? Yeah. Bob, you cut it off anytime you need to. Yeah.
How do you, what they call flash iridized or flash red or something, how do they do that?
Flash red.
Flash iridized, it's not,
I don't know.
not heating.
Oh. Yeah, that I don't know. It's a question beyond me. We don't do it at that. Yeah.
On the check, when you talk about check, right?
Yeah, that's a heat check, yeah.
Now, when you look at it, it's like a smoky kind of look inside of there. Like a flat kind of look in that line. Is that the same thing?
You shouldn't look smoky, it should look shallow and bright.
It's like dirt, sort of a dirty kind of.
He's asking about a dirt mark. Pardon me? What?
It's a heat check. When you look in there, it looks like a crack, but it's not a crack, or you see some darker color.
He's talking about darker color running through, like a streak through the glass. Chances are that was the lubricant or wax or something we used in the mold, that when they pressed, it picked it up and rolled it inside. We call them oil marks at our place. Yeah, and they look like oil. They look like dirt inside, but they're not cracked.
How did the Whimsies, where there's only like 1, 2, or 3, ever get out of the company? They were never used for manufacturing or got out to the market. How did they get out of the plant? By the maker himself carrying it over?
Well, it's not permitted. That doesn't mean people don't steal things. I
Well,
think.
you wouldn't manufacture one, that's the only one that's out there. Whimsy.
Well, sometimes, for Whimsies, they'll make this one of each sometimes, yeah. I don't think I answered your question.
Well, I want to know, when we find what we call a whimsy, something that's still altered,
Yeah.
and there's maybe only one going, how does that get out of the company?
Well, sometimes we make them for the collectors. Like we make these baskets, take this basket, and they may take it like this, and then the guy to make a whimsy, he may bring it up and put a twist in it. Or he may make a straight handle. He'd say, get a different spot mold for me.
But he wouldn't do just one of them.
Yeah, he might. Oh, yeah. Yeah. For those who've been responsible for ordering things for collectors clubs, what they usually do is make whimsies, 30 or 40 of them at the end of the turn. They'll order an item for the club, and then they'll make 20, 30, 40 whimsies, and then they'll be auctioned off. That's how you get out. Yeah. I think that takes care of it, except for my, I want to give away a few things if I might. Well, I'll tell you what, could you do it for me? Right there, that's it. I think that's it. No, this thing here, I think. Yeah. Hold on to your papers there, man. Yeah. Why don't you just, have some lady pull out a number. Because some of these things I had made, this is the most beautiful plate, but this will show you how plate's made. I'd like to give this one away. What's the number? 17. 17. You got 17 back there? Yes. Come get it. Okay, if you will. Or pass it back, if you will. Oh, here you go. Hey, John. Okay. Now, so everybody should understand what a second is like. Not a second, actually. The reject is too crooked to handle. 148. I'd like to give this pair away. Okay? Well, I believe. Hey, what I doubt you, darling. Wait, okay, all right. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, hey, how about this? We give us one of a kind. One of a kind. 160. 160. You even get a piece of plate so you can play with it. No claimers? 160. Go once. Oh, where's the auctioneer? Go twice. No 160, try it again. Nobody wants it, that's what it is. The other side, you can see they do practice. 133. Nobody wants, oh, you do want, all right. There. I'll tell you, because of that, wait a minute, hold a minute. No, that's not it. Here it is. There. That's for you. That'll go with it. And if you want to see what it looks like swung out, just ask. Okay, what do we have this time? 42. How about this pair? 42. Come and get them. Okay, I'd like to get rid of this, because you won't find that very often. Because that'll show you what it's like both ways. Yeah. And this. Yes. 159. 159. Who's 159? Fish, egg, bear. Fish. Yes. Oh, I broke it. Hey, Joe, would you pass that down, please? Thanks. 85. No 85? No cigar. Okay. 124. Which one? The egg or the bear?
The bear.
Got it. One egg coming up. And then I got a question for you. Thanks. Sorry. Oh, I got to tell about the cut shut for Thomas Frank. 127. Right here. Okay, one egg. Oh, I'll tell you. Oh, hey, I've got to, do you mind if I take a moment? Frank asked me to show you the reverse C plate. This is a plate that was produced, I think by Westmoreland or Imperial, I don't know which. And Frank wanted it for years. He wanted to have one. He couldn't get it, so he had one made. Okay, the glass factory, right? And this is the mold. Of all the molds, this is the heaviest. And if you can see the pattern, now if you can imagine, the guy has to chip that, and then he has to put the identical pattern, in this case the ring, and make it match. going upside down. Well, it so happens my friend who you saw there, Al Van Dyke, was making a pattern of small roosters. Instead of having a fountain in the top like this, he's got one in the center, and then the roosters go out like spokes on a wheel. So he made the bottom. And he thought, I can copy this using that machine I told you about. Very carefully lined it all up, made it, polished it, put it together, and he was off by the width of a pencil mark. He had to pour plastic in it and press it, take it apart, worry the piece out a little bit more, put it, plastic, took him longer than if he'd done it the correct way the first way. Frank wanted me to show you what a cut-shut cruet is. Cut, C-U-T, shut, S-H-U-T. This is pressed upside down. Bottom is open. The hole is supposed to be in the top. It's very thin between the plunger and the bottom plate. Remember, the bottom plate would be down here, the mold would be here, the ring on top, the plunger. The plunger comes almost all the way. And then what they do, the plunger comes out, the ring comes off, and they pull the valve out of here and knock it through. The hole's through there. This is open. Then they take this out as it cools and so forth. Grab a hold of it here. Put it on the end of a snap and rolls up and down the bench. They heat this part here. And then the finisher takes his pinchers and squeezes this down. If you can picture this coming down like this to a small button. He runs it back and forth so there's only a button, and then he pushes them together the tines, and the button drops off. So now you got that thing sitting out like this, and he takes his paddle and pushes it in, and completely covers off the bottom. And that's where it cut shut. So if you ever hear where a cut shut cruet is, now you know the whole story. The whole story, oh God. That was bad. Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. I see anything else I want? One more thing. Let me see. I'd like to invite you to come up later. This is blowing. How do you know this is blowing? If you feel the inside, what do you know about it? It what? It follows the contours. This is pressed. This is pressed, so it's fairly smooth on the inside. Does not follow the contours. One other rule of thumb about blownware. If it's bigger down below than it is up above, normally it's blown. Normally. There's a few exceptions. This was pressed like a regular cereal bowl and then pushed in to make a rose bowl. How can you tell it's pressed? Feel the inside. That's the clue. You got a pattern on the inside. It's pressed. If it's smooth, it has to be blown if it doesn't follow the contours. End of the test. Thank you very much.